Well, over the last few weeks, I have made a great deal of the two subtypes of INFJ, namely the adaptive submissive INFJ and the solipsistic INFJ. And throughout, the various videos where I have touched on the topic of these two particular types or subtypes of INFJ, I've been hinting at, I've been mentioning, I've been indirectly describing what the third subtype of INFJ, which I think is the most complete mode of INFJ being, is, namely the spiritualized INFJ, or synonymously the liberated INFJ. And what I have been saying in those videos is that this is a very rare subtype. You're rarely to encounter it because, well, first of all, INFJs are rare. But even among INFJs, the spiritualized INFJs tend to be very rare because it's a very difficult mode of being to embody. I don't want to say to achieve. And the reason why I don't want to say that the spiritualized INFJ is a mode of being that you achieve is that it's not like that. It's not the case that you do what's required of you and then you become spiritualized forever and after. No, it's constant practice. And people, INFJs who experience spiritualization, they tend to go through various modes, even across the week. It's hard to remain continuously in a spiritualized stage, and that's the mistake that people make sometimes about thinking too rigidly of the modes of INFJ being as if they are types, which is why I tend to prefer to refer to them as modes of being, as families sometimes, or sub-families. But maybe for convenience's sake, we can talk about subtypes. So the liberated INFJ is obviously an INFJ who has overcome or is able to overcome severance, and severance being the fundamental and often felt to be unsurpassable chasm between the NI world, the world of the world of the solipsist, and the external social world, the external world including the social world, which is the world that is favored by the adaptive submissive INFJ at the expense of their NI individuality, for the sake of getting on with other people. Repression of their NI worldview and their NI world for the sake of adaptation, for the sake of acceptance. And I always like to say that the solipsist is the flip side. It's the position that just, you put a minus sign in front of the adaptive submissive INFJ and you get the solipsist, defined by, they cultivate their individuality by a sense of rejection of the external world and of the social world. So they're self-contained and they very much NI. They're soaked in NI, if you like, and that's what the spiritualized INFJ, I think, understands. Which is also why I think this is a mode of being that is not so common among young INFJs. You're much more likely to encounter it with INFJs that have seen a lot of life and have been taught a lot of lessons by life through mistakes, experiences, encounters, reflections. I think it's also why the archetypal spiritualized INFJs that we see in literature or in myth are usually old men, like maybe the one that comes to mind first of all would be Gandalf, but there's Dumbledore as well. Gandalf and Dumbledore I think are very very clear examples of spiritualized INFJs, and you probably would, these are the first two that came to mind, but there are so many kind of old men, wizardly kind of spiritualized INFJs, and there could be all women too, and I'm sure there are, but it's not really a surprise, because that also signifies this is a mode of being that with life experience you get equipped to be able to attain it and to be able to live in that mode. So the overcoming of severance is essentially being able to reconcile the life within the NI world and life within the external world, including the social world. And we know that there's like a tendency for these worlds to pull in opposite directions, leaving the INFJ in a constant state of tension. Now, because of this constant state of tension, which is the the physical manifestation of severance, you get those who opt for, relaxation of the tension via one pole, which is adaptation, or the other pole, which is solipsism. And the liberated INFJ manages somehow to resolve the tension. It's almost like, it reminds me a little bit of the conflict of opposites that Jung talks about. Jung, probably a spiritualized INFJ himself, how did I not think of him, And surprise, surprise, our first image of Jung is always that of an old man. We don't tend to think of the younger Jung, when we sort of conjure up, bring forth a Jung's face in our minds, a picture of Jung in our minds, we think of the older Jung. So that's again a theme, leitmotif that is really not accidental. Now, the overcoming of this sense of severance is very difficult, and it's hard to quite know how to do it. It's hard to know how to do it also. It's hard for me also to tell you how to do it, because I don't consider myself to be spiritualized. I'm very much still in the midst of that tension between, the demands of the solipsist and the demands of the adaptive. I'm locked in the middle. Like, this is, and if I experience glimpses of liberation, I think they're discontinuous and certainly glimpses, and hopefully, maybe in terms of mode of being, I can improve. But this is where I am, so I can't really give you a template, given that I'm on that path as well. But something that I've really noticed, something that seemed to be common to all those spiritualized INFJs, is that, first of all, they fundamentally understood and accepted that their nature as meaning-making beings, that their nature is that of furthering a certain sense of mission, a certain sense of worldview, by bringing new meanings to the world, right? And even in the current world, where meaningfulness is really taking second place compared to efficiency, cause and effect relationships, technological productivity, and so on. So the question of meaning and meaningfulness is kind of a little bit forgotten about, or suppressed, but that doesn't change the mission of the spiritualized INFJ, or the INFJ in general for that matter. And the spiritualized INFJ has really understood that. He's really understood that, and he's made that mission his or hers. And further than that, he comes to then realize that in order to carry on his mission as a meaning-making being, he needs the NI function, he needs the NI worldview, because that's the meaning-making function par excellence, by definition. But he also has come to understand and appreciate that solipsism does not actually allow him to produce new meanings. It hits a wall eventually, because it's kind of starved of external stimulation. It doesn't have the external data to process into new meanings via the agency of NI. And somehow, so the spiritualized INFJ is able to make the two worlds work together to, keep producing those new meanings, those new metaphors, those new ways of understanding and appreciating the world, bringing a new view onto things that seemed obvious, bring a new perspective. And of course, there's also a reference to the notion of vocation, right? Notion of vocation, which is something that I discuss in the Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ, on the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness. You can still get it. It's got 125 reviews on Amazon, which is really amazing over the years, and it's really well rated. Check it out. Talks about the idea of if you like, you can have prescience as vision and prescience as vocation. And vocation is this idea that you have to work with other people to bring about your unique vision, and that's the way of overcoming severance in the social world as well, which the spiritualized INFJ has understood. There's much more to say. I will stop here for now, but hopefully this is a bit of a further development on the nature of the spiritualized INFJ. If you want to know more as well on this topic, you have the book that introduces the concept of a spiritualized INFJ, which is my new book, The Infinite Soul, on INFJ world in the modern world, finding meaning, a rich life, a significant life, a purposeful life in a world that's often hostile to us. So check the link below, it's right below if you want to get the book, or leave a review if you read the book and loved it, because I always need reviews. And don't forget, the lifeblood of my channel is Patreon donations to keep the channel going, to enable me to continue with the channel. I'd be so grateful if you considered it. In the meantime, take care, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.